All right.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming to our block party. So just a bit of context for the Writer's Block, as I'm sure you already know very well, is an online writing centre which is dedicated to writing in all its forms across the Liverpool City region. So we've had Luke Barnes join us for our November writing residency, which has been really exciting. And I'm sure everyone's had a brilliant time at all of the workshops. We've really delved into some really hard-hitting topics and particularly explored writing for theatre, which is really great and a perspective that we've not covered in great detail before. So yeah, I'll just do a little intro for Luke, who, as again, I'm sure you're familiar with, but just a bit of context about Luke's work. Luke has found significant success winning the Scotsman Emerging Talent Award, as well as being runner-up in Off West End Awards for Most Promising Playwright and the Off West End Best New Play Award for his poignant piece, Bottleneck. Luke's theatre credits include The Freedom Project, The Jumper Factory, The Sad Club, and All We Ever Wanted Was Everything. Luke is a writer for screen and stage and works predominantly in the theatre sector. So it's been absolutely lovely having Luke with us. And yeah, I can't wait to hear what he's produced for his creative response to our writing residency. And yeah, it's been lovely to have everyone at these workshops, and we hope that you've really found something beneficial and maybe some skills about writing for theatre and playwriting and the backstage side of things. And yeah, I'll hand it over to Luke to read his piece.
Thank you very much. I haven't actually written anything because the nature of what my job is, what my practice is, I think I didn't want to spend the time here really with an end product. I want to take time to listen and think about what the point of anything anyone does is. And what I've taken from this is, I don't know if you know, but recently the Arts Council for Theatre have changed their mission objectives away from pursuit of excellence towards a thing called Let's Create, which is the idea of making work with communities, real people that aren't just artist led. And I've always suspected that theatre works at its best when it's about facilitating communities to speak for themselves, in the hope of communities being able to listen and reevaluate the way that we live together, and that we exist for ourselves, and the way that we relate. And spending time doing this, just talking to people and listening to what people do, think, live, and the art that we make together. I'm convinced that's the right way. I'm convinced it's the right way to do it. I'm convinced that this new era of theatre is going to be purposeful and impactful and relevant, and I really hope we'll move away from this antiquated idea of what good means. I'm sure we'll still have loads of Shakespeare plays, going to sell tickets and stuff, but the idea that all we can do as artists is live in our bodies, look at the world, speak, and ask to be heard, in the hope that our audience can listen and evaluate our place in society, is all we can ever do. I'm just really heartened with the depth of thoughts, ideas, perspectives, forms that we found during these last couple of weeks. And the conversation has been so illuminating for me in terms of talking about gender and form and why we do things. And I feel like this is really well, I feel like I've found a part of my practice that I think's gone along neglected. I think you get to a point when you start, I've definitely found it, where I've started working from a place of interest and not a place of self-reflection and impact. And coming back to that core question of why do we do anything, it's really honed in that the only thing we have as artists is the fact we are ourselves. It's our biggest strength. And that means talking about our history or just examining where we are in society or whatever. But I've come back to this place of being like, if I can work my shit out, where and I hope that like in the act of doing that, other people might also be able to work their shit out and feel seen or feel like they've got allies or whatever. And that's what this has given me. It's given me a sense of myself again. And I think I've lost it purposefully. So I feel immensely grateful for this time just to think about why we do things and how we do things and what the purpose is. And I'm just like buzzing with the spectrum of ideas and forms that have come up in this week with your work, and I'm really heartened for the creative life of everyone in it. So without further ado, then I guess it's time to delve into the pieces.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'll ask you a few questions first, and then we can sort of go through what, I mean, you've already talked about the residency a lot, which is great. And yeah, if you don't want to read anything, that's absolutely fine. But yeah, I've just got a couple of questions that I thought we could ask and maybe have a chat about it. Yeah, so I think, yeah, you said some really brilliant stuff there. And I think that's one of the things that I really like about the writer's block, is that it's kind of like a mutually beneficial thing. Like we have these discussions, but it's not so much you necessarily instruct, and like there's things that you're learning from our writing community and our participants as well. And it's all about having that kind of open discussion and everyone learning different things from each other. So I was just wondering if maybe in like the conversations, particularly more about like political topics like masculinity or that kind of thing, if there's been any like takeaways for you from that, any like eye-opening things that you've thought, oh, maybe that would be something I could talk about in my writing.
Yeah. Yes, but that conversation, particularly the gender thing, was properly rigorous, and like it's just reminded me that like, yeah, again, like coming out of that conversation, we could have spoke about, I was there for like what, an hour and a half or something, and like we could have spoke about that for weeks. But coming out of that, I was reminded, a couple of pieces I won't share who, but a couple of pieces people sent in about their experiences to do with the masculine experience. I'm reminded that, yeah, we talk a lot about the idea that all we have is our bodies and our perspective and our histories, but also we have to look at ourselves within rigor. Within rigor, we have to examine our experiences within a wider context and wider perspectives. You know, some of the pieces people sent through were about men older than me, burdened by the expectation to provide and to be seen and heard and to be loved. And then other people were talking about their negative experiences with men from other genders. And like, yeah, that's what we take from this. Take from that is that, like, yes, we live experiences and we're convinced that they are true, they're real, they're useful to be heard. When we sit to write, we also have to, I think, consider the rigor of other people's lived experiences and how what we're talking about fits into that wider spectrum, what's the word? The wider complex structure of the whole picture. You know, one thing I think that I've taken from this is like talking about big things like gender. We're really good at interpreting what that means for us, but I'm not particularly good at, I'm sure people are, is comprehending the entire thing. So when we talk about truth, then we must also talk about the comprehensive experience of all the other people that we come across that we know might see this in exploring this main thing. We must seek to be comprehensive, not just interpretive. That was a big lesson for me coming out of that discussion, for sure. Generally speaking, I mean, one thing it's really is, especially in television, because it's all about catchy ideas, isn't it? It's just to remember that everyone has a vast experience of life and is infinitely cleverer than this industry might might take its audiences for. I think there's like that's the main thing. I think television especially undermines its audiences. And like my time now I've moved back to Liverpool, that's just my therapy time again now. Just keep being reminded that like how deep the experience of life is outside of this little creative circle. And just being reminded that like everyone's life is massively epic, and that's what people bring to art when they come and see it. So we have to bring that to it as well. We have to bring that depth of experience and that seriousness and that respect, because if we don't, then we're doing a disservice to the experience of living, which I think I've been guilty of that before for sure. I think I've been guilty of like, I've got an idea, I'm gonna like research this from my perspective, present it, and be like, that's my perspective on it. But like, actually, everyone's bringing so much to it. We've got to be rigorous and deep and take it seriously and feel it. That's what I've taken from that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, like we've had since I started at WoW in July, August. So when I've been doing the writer's block, you're the first playwright we've had. So the other, like we've had fiction writers, and I think there's an important distinction there, especially when, I mean, obviously in fiction writing you talk about other experiences, and there's a multitude of characters and experiences in that, but with screen and stage that kind of is brought to life a bit more, and there's other factors that you kind of have to consider in depicting that, and I was just wondering if how much of a consideration that is, and if like what kind of things that you're working on now, and if these discussions have brought any perspective into like fleshing out those characters and depicting them that way in a visual way on screen and stage.
Yeah, I mean, the next play I'm gonna write, I've been wanting to do it for ages, and like this is that thing about like tapping into rigorous comprehension and like epicness of human experience outside like artistic comprehension. I'm making a show. Well, I've got a commission to we'll make it, we'll write it. We've got a commission to write a show. Some real people, some Navy vets in Plymouth, and like my process has always been like listen, platform, their voice will change they want to see. But actually, I think we can go further. I think there's room to make work that allows people to just talk. I don't know how that happens, but like, how do we make something that gives a platform for people who want to speak genuinely, not interpreted by me, but just be able to say what they want to say in that moment. And like, I'm gonna work on that, because like, the more you talk to people, the more you realize that you know nothing, you know so little about what you think you're writing about. So I'm going to try and make something, I think, that allows people to actually just talk if they want to next year in Plymouth. We'll see.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. And especially, I think one of the best things about the writer's block is having one-to-one sessions where you can, like from the writer's perspective, get that feedback and from someone like yourself, and really have that space to delve into your work. And then from your perspective also, you get to have these like quite personal conversations with people. And yeah, I was just wondering if there was any moments that stuck in your mind from that, and how all of our brilliant writers have what they've brought to the table during those discussions.
The one commonality between everyone is everyone's impetus is so worthwhile. Like, it's so easy. I think a lot of people I spoke to over that process was like, I've got this thing, but I think it might not be. Like, everything everyone presented is worth following. Everything I read everyone's, and like everything everyone sent through is the exact thing we're talking about: the need to speak, a hope to share, a hope to change. And like, 99%, like vast majority of them were like, found the form we need to do it in. Like, it's having a conviction just to follow through with what we know we need to talk about in the way that we know we need to speak it. And that's the one commonality. And like, I keep saying it, but like, the one thing we have as artists, the fact we have experiences and bodies and perspectives, it's the one thing we have. Leading into a rigorous understanding of everything around that in a way that is us and everyone's there. Everyone's done it, and like I'm telling everyone who sent pieces in, everyone can do this. Everyone has that skill set and that perspective and that depth. I was so buzzing to read them all, because it's just like Liverpool. It's not Liverpool. Like everyone has this sort of like this creative core, and like it's all there, and it's just about confidence to do it. Just giving yourself the belief to say, I've done this for a reason. It matters. My perspective matters. The way I'm doing this is right. And then just believe in it, because what else is there? And it's all there. It's just self-belief, self-belief, self-belief. And like, I was really aware that I'm like a cis white straight male saying that, but like, I'm telling everyone who sends stuff in, like, it's all there. So why not just go for it, you know, and write it and say, this is me, present to the world, hope people hear it, hope people listen, hope people are affected by it, you know, because that's what we want, isn't it? It's that belief.
Yeah.
It's like, so I was so encouraged to read them. I was so encouraged, and talking to people, you know, the depth and breadth of experiences that people brought to this, just bring to this practice. It's people, you know, it's of society's benefit to hear these stories. So why not just go balls to the floor and write them, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really, really lovely to hear, and I think that's the thing about this. It is giving confidence a lot of the time, because I mean, especially throughout like COVID and the fact that things have gone digital now, it's massively more accessible, but it can also be quite intimidating to be in your room and reading something that you've written, that can be quite vulnerable to people that aren't physically in the room.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to, once you're able to do that, really, you probably weirdly confident enough to even go on stage and actually be in that room with people, because you will get that support there. And yeah, what's your perspective been on like doing this digitally and speaking to people over Zoom and that kind of thing?
I love it, because I don't leave my house. That's great, but like, I don't like going out. I'm a bit of a hermit. That's not true.
Me too.
But I think it's great, because like, I think what this does give you is it does feel safe, and you can back out. You can be quiet as you like if you want. You can speak if you want, and you don't have to feel like. And so also, obviously, really practical reasons, really accessible for loads of people come across the country, across the world, and in a lot of cases we've had over these last 3 weeks. And I think it's great. I think it's great, yeah. And just going back a second, like talking about that thing about being right to speak. Everyone, well, 90% of like people in the world we get told subconsciously or subliminally that we're not supposed to take space. So like, and the whole point of this process for me is giving yourself the self-belief to say, my voice matters, my body matters, what I've got to say matters, because I can feel it in my blood that the act of me talking will make this world easier for myself or someone else. We'll understand each other in the way we live more comprehensively if I speak. And that could be saying anything that's true does that. And it's giving yourself the belief to say, I matter, when we're told not to. And that's the most important thing, like, we can take from all of this. So like, I promise you, I've read all this. I've been speaking to you for 3 weeks. I've read all your stuff. All this stuff matters, and it's important. And giving yourself the belief to say, me speaking, sorry, picture fell off the wall there. Give yourself the belief to say, this matters. I matter. My perspective is important. Is the whole game. Because it is important. It is important. Anything you want to say is important, as long as it's true, and you know, as long as you feel it, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
That's my one big takeaway from this, because because that's the whole point. You know, that's the whole point of this. Like, let's create coming forward. The whole point of this, the whole point of any art form is speaking, and like, we just have to give ourselves the self-belief and the understanding that it's worth saying, because it is always worth saying. Any truth is always worth saying.
Yeah, 100%. I'd like to kind of know what things in theatre that you're excited about now. What I know you talked about when to create a piece about conversations, and that sounds really good. And I think just what kind of trends in theatre that you're sort of keeping an eye out for, what you want to create next, and what kind of pieces are out there, and especially for people who are coming into this and maybe don't have connections in theatre, what are some like things to keep an eye out for and ways to engage in that?
So the thing I'm going to make next year, I'm really excited about. That's going to be Plymouth Theatre Royal. Hopefully, this all goes well. We'll make that there. That's going to be like a Navy thing. But like generally speaking, like trends at the minute in theatre, I think are really cool. That we're starting to get more of, and hope it will carry on, a cross contamination of like lived experience and the skill set of theatre making coming together. Not necessarily from theatre maker, but collaborations between groups of people and theatre makers for world class theatre. I mean, like you look at like Company 3, Lola Eris, like people like that, like, and that's the Art Centre. That's really, really amazing. It's really amazing, forward-thinking stuff. And I think on that line, we're about to get a new artistic director at Liverpool Everyone Players, which I'm very, very excited about. I think they're amazing. So excited for them to start. I think that's going to be an absolutely different ball game. It's going to change the whole city, I think. What else is going on in the theatre? In terms of like trend, it's been difficult because I've not really been in it because it's been closed for a year, and now we're just coming to the end of like their filler seasons. So I don't know. It's interesting. I've just been on the judging panel for the Jaws of Iron Award, which is like the big playwriting award, and it's interesting reading the themes in that. There's a lot of stuff about like breaking down buildings, and dismantling things. There's a lot of stuff about like taking ownership from marginalized perspective, which is all great. But like theatre's in crisis at the minute. There's no like sugarcoating it. Like it's a really, really difficult thing. The model doesn't work. It doesn't really serve its workers. It doesn't really serve its artists. It doesn't really serve its audiences. It's going to take a lot of dismantling. So I think whatever happens, it's going to be awesome because it can't really carry on doing what it is at the moment. If you're looking at artists, the younger artists, I think are amazing. I think Jasmine Lee Jones is awesome. Lulu Razka, I think, is awesome. Emily White, I think, is awesome. There's like loads of really young artists I think are doing really, really, really exciting stuff. But I just hope that whatever happens, we latch onto that idea that the central purpose of theatre has to be to allow communities to come together, to look at each other and look at ourselves and how we live in our bodies individually and together. I can leave reflecting on that in a different manner to do that in a better way, preferably in the most like fun way we can. That's what I hope happens. But whether that'll happen or not, I'm sure we might just have, Tom Hiddleston play Hamlet. Yeah. I'm sure that'll happen as well.
I do like Hamlet.
Great play, but you see it 4 times a year, and do you care anymore?
I think on that point, Nancy said in the chat, even if something is worth saying, there is still a selection by publishers, journals, etc., about what they think will appeal to the public / will sell, and that kind of ties into all of the problems you've highlighted with the theatre industry at the moment, and the same goes for publishing and the arts in general. And I think it's kind of a difficult question to answer because there's only so much power that artists and writers themselves have in this situation, especially people from marginalized communities. But if you could sort of give just any sort of piece of advice for people who are in that situation and are struggling to get their stuff out there, what would that be?
One advice I would say, because I've done this myself, is like, don't compromise and make things that you think they would like, because you will always, always, always fail. I've done that before. Like, I remember the first time I got a big commission from a major theatre, I was like, I'm going to read everything they've done. I'm going to work out what they like. I'm going to work out what the core of a play for them is. And I did it. And I sent it off, and they were like, what the fuck? Sorry, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I've just written a play for you. And they were like, you don't write the play you think we'll like. You write what you think you want to make, and then we'll help you do it. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I got sacked after that because obviously I didn't know what I was doing. But it's a really good lesson to learn. Like, you can't compromise. It's like, even if you write that thing because you think they like it and they buy it and they do it, you'll hate it. And you'll be like, I'm not being true to myself. Like, there's nothing about this that is about me experiencing the world, asking the world to change. It's just me pandering to it for money. That's not being hard. If you want to do that, go and work in the city. You'll make 20 times what you make. It's not well paid enough to sell your soul.
Yeah, that's true. And I think talking about how important everyone's voices are is a great way to lead into some of the writing that we've got today. So we've got three writers who will be reading their work for us, and this is work that they've developed alongside Luke in the one-to-one sessions and inspired by the workshops that we've done throughout November. So I will leave it to you, Luke, to hand over to each reader, as you will know them best. And yeah, thank you so much for chatting with me today, and I'll see you at the end.
I'm actually just going to the bathroom 2 seconds because I want to be comfortable. Wait there.
All right. Well, I'll chat for a bit. So each of the writers will have produced their creative. It's kind of like a creative response from their perspective to Luke's residency, and it's really nice to see the ways that these workshops have inspired people. Like we've had throughout the course of residency, we've had a lot of stuff for writing for theatre, but also we've had more general stuff with talking about masculinity, and I hosted the Enterprise Hub event, which was all about like perspectives for artists about creating work, and I think there's elements of that come to life in creative responses and how we sort of navigate that world as writers and our own identity. So yeah, Luke has done one-to-one sessions with each of these writers, and when he returns he will introduce each of them and we will get to hear some of the writing. So yeah, I can't wait to hear what everyone's produced. And our first writer is Arthur Bowling, who Luke will introduce, but Luke will read Arthur's work on behalf of him. So I will hand it over to you, Luke. Thank you.
Let's get it up. So this is a piece by Arthur. Arthur was in hospital for 5.5 months. He had COVID twice. And during this time, I had a great time talking to Arthur yesterday in the one-to-ones. We just chatted about art and the world and society and what the point of it all is. And it's been a proper privilege getting to know you, mate. So thank you. And this is his poem that he wrote during his time on the ward when he had COVID twice. It's called Kismet. I should also give this context. Like during his time on the ward, he connected with a nurse who is Yazidi. It's just like correct me if I'm wrong, Arthur, but I think I remember saying it's a small tribe of people within Syria who has come to the UK to be a nurse via Holland because they thought Liverpool was a welcoming and good place to work as a nurse. And during this time when he was sick, she really looked after him. And Arthur wrote poetry for her, and she was really inspired by that. And this is one he wrote for her. It's called Kismet. Hold my hand, smile. Tell me I'm not dying. Hide your emotions. Stop those tears. That crying. We were meant to meet, to be together, a Scouse and a Yazidi, you fleeing death and persecution, me, death and COVID. Life's not easy. Proud to be a Peshmerga. My Xena, warrior princess, a fighter. Your smile makes my pain, my trauma, somewhat lighter. Stars collide, planets implode. The odds of us holding hands is karma, meant to be. So thank you, my Xena nurse. Your struggle, your insight sets me free. That's it. I think it's a beautiful little poem. I think it's proper gorgeous, and I just want to thank you, Arthur, for sharing that. I know that's quite emotional.
The part that we're missing is that why you're actually reading my sort of poem is because it's so traumatic for me. And when I try to think about this, even though I've been out sort of 7 months, it still emotionally affects me. And I tried 3 or 4 times thinking, oh, I've just got to read this, I've just got to do it. But emotionally, it just got to me, and I just kept stuttering and saying, well, let's try and redesign this. It's never happened in a block party before. I'm going to ask Luke to read my poetry out, you know, but obviously I managed to read it to yourself, you know, one to one. I don't care, that's sort of a masculine side. But when there's sort of other people around, especially sort of women feminists and stuff, I find it more emotive and I find it difficult. So for you to have a go at that and do what you've done, it's brilliant. So yeah, thanks. It's
Thanks for writing it. It's gorgeous.
You know.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary thing, like especially when something's so raw and felt and still new. But thank you for writing it, man. I think it's beautiful, and yeah, I feel really touched that you'd asked me to do that for you. So thank you for allowing me to. Okay, the next piece is Pauline. This is a reading from Homeless City, State of Nation. So Pauline, if you're feeling up to it and ready.
I think I better just explain because you haven't seen the whole play. But it's based on Shakespeare's Henry VI Part 2, the Cade Rebellion. And the Cade Rebellion was something that took place earlier in 1450. And Shakespeare incorporates the rebellion into this play. And I would like to also say that Cade was actually appointed the role of Cade, and Kemp was the William Kemp, and he was the biggest, most popular actor of the time. So if we don't acknowledge that fact, then you can't really say something which the many directors and academics say, that Shakespeare was on the side of the king and the nobles in this play. But I think that Shakespeare was actually really on the side of Cade and the rebels. Anyway, Kemp, Will Kemp, the actor, was also known as a political activist. He was very much a socialist activist. So that's another interesting insight, I think, into what Shakespeare was trying to do with this play. And what I've done is I've kind of incorporated the Cade Rebellion from the play into a modern setting where two students are discovering more and more about this Cade Rebellion and Elizabeth I. And yes, so that's it really. So should I start? Okay. A huge portrait of Elizabeth hangs centered against the stage back wall throughout the show, watching, and then we're watching her. At the center of the front of the stage sits a crown, perhaps made of messy twigs and straw and tilting over, a cockeyed clown of a court crown. Scattered around the stage floor, huddled under blankets, the homeless are sleeping rough. As the play progresses, the number increases. So this is scene 2. Cade and the actors playing Cade have come into our theatre. This is today, in the present. They've stormed into the theatre, and we've got the nobles on the stage that are very, very scared because they know that Cade and the rebels are coming to get them. New alarums and excursions, drums louder and faster. Cade voiceover, cry liberty, let's slip our chains of slavery. Noble number 2, voice from over the stage, shouts, get you to the king. Cade means to take his crown. Cade, get say. Rebels' cheers suddenly stop. Cade voiceover again, pull down the inns of court, pull down them all. Drum beats louder and faster. Noble number 2, voiceover from the stage. Jack Cade is marching over London Bridge. Cade voiceover, burn down the tower, set London Bridge afire. Drum beats louder and faster. Then they shut off. Silent. Cade with a roar that resounds to the rafters. Have at them. Nobles' voices from the stage, together, terrified. They're here. Lights snap up on the nobles on stage, pissing themselves with fear, staring at Cade. A powerhouse of physical strength and effortless grace, he springs onto the stage like an agile tiger. He's wearing sackcloth, brandishing a nobleman's long, fine sword. Fearless, he goes to playfully lunge at one of the nobles, who jumps back. Cade looks at them and pointedly sheathes his sword and turns to look at us in the audience to make sure we've got the point. The nobles try to man up to Cade. The rebels are dumbstruck. The nobles make to fly off, clumsily tripping over their fine, long swords. In one glorious, impossibly acrobatic leap, Cade lands to face the nobles. He strips them of both their swords at the same time with a casual flick of his wrists, and with the tips of the blades tosses their hats off into the air and spins them on the tips like spinning tops. He stuffs one hat into the other and puts them on top of his own hat, posing like a toff, fussing to arrange it and turning to us with an exaggerated, "How do I look?" The following to be improvised with props and lighting. Cade twirls their two swords up expertly in a perfect arc at the nobles' faces, a hair's breadth from their cheeks. He throws the swords to the rebels. Cade twirls their two swords expertly in a perfect arc. Oh, sorry, that's a bit of a repeat, a mistake, sorry. Cade turns to the audience in triumph, a beguiling smile. He unsheathes his own sword with a flourish and points it at the nobles, now shitting their breeches, paralyzed with terror. Cade, they think they are all in order, these taffeta punks, when they march towards us. He turns his back on the nobles. They scurry to their feet. Instantly, Cade swings back to them and in one stroke, sweeps his blade through the air in an arc. As he's about to slice the head off noble number one, lights down, a blood-curdling howl. Noble number one remains in the dark, lights up. Cade sends his blade in another sweeping arc through the air, and just as he is about to slice off the head of the other, lights down, a harrowing scream, black. Sound of Cade and rebels moving on the stage to pick up the prop heads of the nobles. The bodies of the nobles are hidden. Cade turns to his men and raises his bloody sword aloft. Noble number one, there's his head on its tip, and he throws noble number two's head to the rebel. But Cade, but then we are in order when we are most out of order. The rebels roar. Cade, have at them. Rebels roar. Cade, find, Lord, say. Fast black. A dim light comes up to reveal a bare stage, except for an empty bench. The portrait of Elizabeth seems to have gone skewiff. Will and Dick are two cool students, dressed identically in black t-shirts, jeans, and sneakers. They're carrying a backpack, iPod plugged in. Will and Dick enter purposefully in a state of excitement. Will from stage left, Dick from stage right. Will is rifling through a book in a state of thrilling discovery. Dick is tapping his iPhone urgently, reading what's on the screen. Swiping, tapping, swiping, tapping. Will, amazed at what he's reading. Fucking hell. Dick, amazed at what he's reading. No shit. A severed head flies through the air across the stage. They stop in their tracks and watch it roll as if they see such things every day. Another severed head flies. They ignore it. They sit on the bench, dump their bags on the ground, rummage through them impatiently, tossing out books, folders, iPads, sandwiches, Coke bottles. They turn to each other, holding up their sheafs of paper and slap them with the back of their hands in triumph. Then they look at each other quizzically and pull out their earplugs. They make a mock theatrical display of straightening their piles of papers and straightening their non-existent ties and snapping baseball caps on their heads. They each go to pick up the heads and put them under their armpits. They stand to face the audience, a little nervous. The following is fast and physical. Sound of sinister chords. Will, he holds up the head in one hand. You think this is about a revolution in the streets? He jerks his head back to the portrait, long before her time. Dick, when a starving, disaffected populace rose up against government corruption and gross abuses of power. Will, and the poor had decided that they had fucking had enough. Beat, and then he shakes his head, smiling. He thumbs behind him at the portrait. Stage whispers to the audience. She didn't. Lighting change, fast pop music. Through the following, they address the portrait. Will, item. You have introduced compulsory taxes for the poor, and I quote, have passed bills for setting the poor on work and for the avoiding of idleness, which, according to your state papers here, you say is an attempt to finance a general welfare system. To the portrait. Item, you have allowed the system of lobbying to expand beyond anyone's memories. Corporate interest groups are becoming more and more sophisticated in bribing your politicians to sponsor bills that are going to get them richer and richer. State papers again. Will, item, you have abused the monopoly system, granting lucrative licenses to your courtiers. I quote one of your ministers. By monopolies, a few were enriched and the multitude impoverished. Dick, and another, these commodities in the hands of these bloodsuckers of the Commonwealth are a whirlpool of the prince's profits. Will, you in perfect politician speak conceded that some of the monopolies you granted have been, and I quote, a lapse of error. But you, the consummate politician, carried on regardless, didn't you? Dick, item, 8 bills passed in Parliament so you can give the revenues and taxes to your favourites. Sweet wines, He looked pointedly at the portrait. You gave that to Golden Balls Essex, didn't you? He continues the list. Tanned leather, leather export, sweet wines, linen cloth, sugar, starch, iron mills, commercial shipping, and the preservation of fish spawn, which is very Will, and here's your Lord Treasurer, William Cecil, the dickhead who's in charge of economic policy. He's just been filibustering like crazy to stall debate in Parliament over your monopolies bill. Drum roll or pop music. They move to face the audience. Lighting narrows round them. Will, to the audience, imagine a country bedeviled by a disastrous economic policy, mounting debt, nightmare inflation, and a monopoly system so unfair it amounts to bureaucratic theft. The guy who's managing the country's economy is doling out so many tax concessions for the already obscenely rich. He's having to impose skyrocketing taxes on the working poor. Will reads. So Walter Raleigh said that the incomes entered in the government tax represented not the 100th part of our wealth. The average tax bill has, for the well-off anyway, went down from £61 to £14. Dick, to the audience. Imagine a people subsisting at near starvation level, facing unprecedented mass unemployment and a devastating crop failures year after year. Food prices have hit the roof, 75%. Will, The number of homeless is increasing every day. They drift from town to town, sleeping rough, begging, left to rot in the gutter. Dick to the portrait. The gap between rich and poor is increasing beyond anyone's memory. Inflation is at 400 to 500%. Sorry, I've got sorry. Yes, left to rot in the gutter. The gap between rich and poor is increasing beyond anyone's memory. Inflation is at 405 to 500,000%, 500%. While your rich subjects are finding ever more strategies to indulge their corrupt tax dodging. Will to the portrait, which you do nothing to stop. Full-time labourers are seeing their wages sunk and facing acute poverty. The poor are getting dispossessed every day. If they manage to keep paying the rent, they're dying of starvation and disease in polluted slums, while the rich are borrowing vast sums to erect or maintain their grand houses with gardens down to the Thames. They adopt new positions on the stage. Will, the poor have been shat on and shat on and shat on. Dick, turning to look at Elizabeth's portrait. You have just been told that a labourer in Kent, he pauses to look at the audience and repeats, a labourer in Kent hopes to, quote, see such war in this realm to afflict the rich men of this country to requite their hardness of hearts towards the poor. Will, turning to her portrait, and another labourer up before the magistrates told the judges last Monday, shit upon your queen. I would to God she were dead that I might shit on her face. Fighting dins. Will, widespread outbreaks of rioting are the only way the poor can make their voices heard. You've had to appoint a provost marshal, ordering him, quote, without delay to execute upon the gallows by order of martial law, vagabonds and all who unlawfully gather themselves in companies. Dick to the portrait. You've seen the largest attempted risings since your grandfather's time and are terrified that if the poor manage to get armed and gather in great numbers, revolution will surely come. Will, and it has come. Black. Sorry, I can't hear you. Oh, what do I do now? Do I go?
I've been unmuted. Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're all good, Luke.
Great. That's beautiful. What I love about that, we missed out. Can you hear me? You know?
Yeah.
Great. What I love about that, I love that the epicness of the first thing, and then going to sort of like Tom Stoppard-esque, innovative world, those two things colliding. It's a bit like Derek Jarman, you know, thinking about, what's the film called Derek Jarman made about the artist? Anyway, those two things crossing over and those massive discussions, properly theatrical, properly epic. Can't wait to read the rest of the thing, Pauline. So yeah, it's massive. Brilliant. We've only got 10 minutes left, so I'll hold the superlatives there, but we missed our one-to-one, Pauline. Must try and arrange that. I'll send you some email or something afterwards. And lastly, before we tie up for the evening, we have Maria, who has written, it's not the piece you sent me, I don't think, but I'm sure it's going to be equally beautiful and heartfelt and poetic and gorgeous. Reading a poem called, I've got it written down somewhere. Oh, come on, I've lost the page.
It's okay, I've got it, Luke.
What's it, Maria?
It's
actually, you can introduce it yourself.
I will, I'm fine. It's actually a prose. It's a memoir that I wrote a while ago, but I got inspired by you and all the other participants. So I yesterday avidly worked on it a little bit more and added to it. And before I begin, I want to thank Arthur and Pauline. Thank you, they were both amazing. I really appreciate them. And I certainly want to thank the staff of WOW. It's been wonderful for me. I've been getting emails for about 5 years, and I've been on this last year to a few of these, and I really want to give great thanks to Luke. I love what you say, Luke. I love what you talk about being your own self and the honesty, and you speak in my kind of language, and I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you so much. So this is a memoir of me, vignettes from childhood from the 60s. So here we go. And I'm aware of the time, and you can stop me at any time. They say if you remember the 60s, you weren't there. Well, I was there, and I do remember. And I remember people and family and my grandmother's warm house on cold winter nights. I remember it with music, and if music be the food of love, then play on. Liverpool, 1960, post-war Britain. In my grandmother's neighbourhood on Scotland Road, where I was born and where I played as a child later, in the still bombed out houses 15 years after the war. I loved it. Where massive, big, classic grand churches that offered spaces for solace and spirituality and friendships on Sundays just hung about on the corners. Liverpool had these major reputable companies like Bibby's and Tate's and Tate and Lyle's, 18th century buildings that stood like proud soldiers on busy streets and offered firm employment for our uncles and our aunties and our grandparents that used to be excited for work come Monday morning. We knew nothing about the slave trade then and the part that Liverpool played in it. The times they were changing, to quote Bob Dylan. My dad was working with his own fruit and vegetable business, and later, like most men, he went to work on Liverpool docks. He'd been a stoker on the massive convoys leading out of Liverpool to Canada and America during the war. And 3 decades later, he received 6 medals for his dedicated service to his country. A real salt of the earth man, a seafarer in the Merchant Navy. He was 14 when he took his maiden voyage. His elder brother-in-law forged his papers so he could go with them. A teenager in New York. Can you imagine a teenager in New York in the 40s? And in New York, he met Marlene Dietrich. Honest to God, this is a true story. And on a bet from his peers, he went over and talked to her, and she signed his passport. Don't know where that passport is today, but I wish I had that. He saw the highlights of Broadway. He drank in bars in the famous Bowery. And in the 40s, he traveled to Egypt, Cape Town, Australia, stayed in Australia for a while with dreams of opening a sheep farm, but that was not to be. So he returned to Liverpool to get married with my mother. Goodbye, Australia. Goodbye, world travel. Goodbye, the war. And welcome to domesticity and children. We moved to Kirby for a new life. We were one of hundreds of families that left the heart of Liverpool to embark on the prominent promises of new adventures. They called it the overspill of congested Liverpool. They offered us green spaces and new beginnings with indoor toilets and hot and cold water that ran into porcelain sinks and baths, where children could run and play and attend new comprehensive schools. My sister Angela was born at the height of the new decade. She is the 8th of my siblings. I am the eldest of 11. And my mother consulted with my sister Risa and I about what name we could call her. She was running out of names. So my sister and I decided that we would like to call her Angela, after some woman that we saw on Sunday nights at the London Palladium, who looked beautiful with these big sticky out dresses. And it was a show that was blasted into our darkened living room each Sunday night at 8 in the evening. It was a live show. It was presented the cream of the entertainment industry in Britain. It was bringing joy and well-needed laughter to the masses, regardless of what classes they were. All you needed was to be able to afford the license for the big black box in the corner that beamed out images and linked to the world, which showed us how small the planet and the world really was, and how we were all connected. And this box was our friend. What a medium for us then. And then Sunday mornings, we listened to Kate Sarah and Doris Day and other people singing on the radio. This is the BBC World Service, the posh voice would say to us as we peeled potatoes and carrots and turnips for the big Sunday lunch after Mass. 1961, my brother Patrick Joseph was born, the 9th living child. Something called the Cold War was looming. My favourite astronaut, Rory Gagarin, had been to space. Wow, I thought, now we were living in interesting times. A group called the Sputniks were #1 on the Hill Parade with Telstar. Some of you will remember that. And my mother would buy the Bunty and the Doody comics for us girls. The lads got the Beano or the Eagle, and my mum got True Romance. My dad got true crime stories on the Liverpool Echo, and we were all happy. 1962. Being a Catholic, we were interested in the Second Vatican Council, and there was a restructuring of the Catholic Church that deemed to form the Catholic Synod in Rome, ruled over by the then Pope John the 23rd. Boy, did we love him. He looked like my granddad, so he was relatable. And this brought many changes to the church and to many families. The rumblings of empowerment and equality and social justice were raised and made a seed in all of us. I was attending St. Gregory's Comprehensive School in Kirby, a school for about 2,000 girls and young women. And we were told that Kirby Newtown had the most children in the whole of Europe at that time that were of school age. We were the budding post-war baby boomers, and we were being moulded. We had a succinct education consisting of mothercraft, cookery, netball, arts and drama, and geography, and lessons that were my favourite was geography, because I would dream about the wonderful faraway lands that my father had told me about, and I knew that I would visit one day. In fact, geography was taught to us by Sister Genevieve, who was also my favourite nun. She was quiet. She had a pasty white saint-like face. And when I felt the feelings when I watched her walk down the corridor, it seemed like she just glided in her holiness, about 2 feet above the floor. She was lovely. We were taught by the Sisters of the Sacred Heart, who still wore their habits and wimples back then. And also we had lay teachers. Listen, Arthur, you'll like this bit. We had a few males and our favourite, Mr. Burns, who taught us pottery. He taught us pottery. He was very avant-garde with his new change the world inventions of art and pottery. And God, did we love him. My sister Donna Marie made her appearance in our family, the 10th beautiful child, with skin like peaches and cream and strawberry blonde hair. My sister Rita and I used to fight over who would mind her and look after her. She was so beautiful, still is. And then the Beatles, they burst on the scene. The Mersey Sound was born, Khrushchev and Kennedy met. The papers called Khrushchev the Russian bear. 1963. My mother's birthday, the 27th of November, a Friday. I left school. I walked over to our biggest store in Kirby called Oaks and News. They sold everything. And I rummaged through the section for a while, testing what I could buy for my mother's 38th birthday. I decided upon a black Chinese design makeup bag because a song that my mother liked was popular in those days. And the lyrics were like this: I'd like to get you on a slow boat to China, all to myself, alone. Some of you might remember that. So I made that choice. Then I got us some foundation in a round steel container. And for both items, it cost me one and six of my hard-earned pocket money. But my mother was worth it. My mother was a good mother. She was worth it then, and she's worth it now. She's priceless. And I always wanted to please her, like most young teenage girls want to. As usual, I took a long time looking around the store, and then when I got the bus home, it was dark, and when I arrived, I went into our living room, and the 6 o'clock news came on, and the headline said, President Kennedy has been assassinated. Oh, this was the first time I had heard that word. It cut through me. I'm loving the lexicon of beautiful words that roll around my mouth. There was a new one, assassinated. Oh, I was shocked. My mother and sister were crying. He was America's first Catholic president, and we put much hope on him for peace. Now the bubble had burst, the bubble had burst. The Mersey beat continued. Jerry and the Pacemakers singing Ferry Across the Mersey became a football anthem for Liverpool football team. Liverpool was lively, making its mark on the world, and people were dancing to twist and shout. My auntie was in the Beatles fan club. She had stacks and stacks of magazines. I wish I'd have kept them to this day. 1964. We used to go pea picking, potato picking, carrot picking, sprout picking on all the farms in Kirby. And Mr. Pope, the farmer, would turn up at our house at 6:30 a.m. in the morning, driving an open cattle cart with high wooden stakes that prevented us from falling out. It was in this that all the children and the mothers were put. My mother at the Queen's Place up front next to Mr. Pope. It was she who rounded up the workers in the streets. Unemployment was just kind of kicking in a little bit there. So some men used to come with us to the farm. We people in the back would still be arising from our sleep, and we were hoping to God that none of our friends would see us in the morning, trapped in this animal contraption. And finally, when we got further away from our streets and into the country and into the fresh air, it would hit our lungs. We would wake up. Then someone would start singing 369, the goose drank wine, the monkey chewed tobacco on the street Carlisle. Some of you might know that. And up to 30 people in the back of the pen, we were all singing. So we were in a world where the Beatles were getting bigger on the main stages of the world with new pop, and we still sang rhythm and blues in the suburbs. 1965, I'm nearly there, everybody. My youngest brother, the 11th child, Paul Michael, was born. It was touch and go there for my mother. She hemorrhaged when my dad has a sign for her to have a big operation, which gives you the sign of the times then that your husband or your partner had to sign for you with your own body to have an operation. We prayed and we cried, and finally one happy day, my dad and my mum came home. I was in this beautiful baby boy wearing a woolen blue hat. They descended from a taxi, and I raised up my arms to carry this new life into our house that I'd done to all my previous 9 siblings. My sister Risa and I were consulted again on the name, and we suggested Paul McCartney, of course. So life was good. We were finally moving into our new house, which 13 of us housed. We had 4 bedrooms, our own front and back garden, where my mother grew beautiful roses. I can still smell them to this day. And it was only 15 minutes walk from where we lived before. And we had to change churches from Holy Angels to St. Michael's because we were in another catchment area. But life for us changed in many ways back then. In our new house, when my sister and I arrived, we were scared because we'd heard from the neighbours that the previous occupant only had 1 leg and he died, and he walked around at night, and what we could hear each night was clump, clump, clump. The sound of his wooden leg hit the wooden floorboards, and we would put the covers over our heads. We'd say our prayers and we hope that, oh God, he doesn't come into our bedroom. And I would walk to my school, St. Gregory's. I was a big girl now, instead of taking the bus. I was a teenager and I was secretly beginning to notice boys. However, we still went on the farm to pick the vegetables to implement the family's income. It didn't take long for our big family to get known in the neighbourhood, and I was happy. I was happy that I could still visit my beloved grandmother in Scotland Road. And my mother always sent me to Great Ormond Street to do the shopping. 1966, headlines: England wins the World Cup against Germany. Oh, it was like the war was being played out again. After the game was finished on TV, the streets were full of people chanting and walking around with British flags. My brothers were so proud, they were shouting out loud, England, England, and they held a homemade flag of an old white sheep belonging to my mother, on which was painted, "We won the war again." The neighbourhood was out in droves, singing and throwing in a few verses of "You'll Never Walk Alone" from the musical Carousel that Jerry, of course, sung very beautifully, but only sung like only Scousers could sing it, not like anyone else. It was music to the ears and it was love to the heart. The nation was celebrating again. It was an achievement. We were all connected with each other, no matter where you came from or how you spoke or what your accent was like. It was okay because the Brits had won the Germans, and that was all that matters. Men who had fought in the war were ecstatic. They drank in pubs, remembering their long-lost war buddies and wiping tears from their eyes. Self-esteem went up. The stock market went up. The team brought the World Cup back to England. Sonny and Cher were #1 in the hit parade with "I Got You, Babe." Life was good in Liverpool until more to come.
Amazing, well done. Thank you so much, Maria.
Maria, I could listen to you talk for hours, absolutely spellbound. You're such like poetry and wit, and you make like these real stories feel massively heightened, poetic and epic, and yeah, I could read it for hours. Thank you so much for sharing that. Always a fan of your writing.
That we've run a little bit over, but it's so worth it to hear everyone's incredible writing, and I think everyone's the stuff that people have brought today has really summed up what we were talking about with different perspectives, because those were some really intensely personal pieces, but also so different in so many ways. And I feel like you all really brought something to it, and yeah, it's just really incredible to here. So thank you so much, everyone, for reading. Thank you to everyone who's participated in this writer's block and the workshops. And thank you to Luke for delivering such a brilliant session today, and all the other workshops, and just a wonderful residency overall. So thank you.
It's been great. Thank you so much for having me. And it's been awesome to talk to you all. Yeah, it's been watching. I'm buzzing off it. So thanks for having me.
Amazing. It's been lovely to have you. And just so everyone's aware, we're taking a little hiatus from the writer's block for December and the Christmas period. So we'll see you all again in the new year, and we'll be back with some brand new writers and some brand new workshops for you all to participate in. So thank you again, everyone, and see you soon.